Hey everyone, welcome to Reflections, the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. We're coming to you courtesy of our broadcasting partner, moretalk.tv. Joining me today on the show is Debbie McGillivary. And Debbie is a professional animal communicator and pet intuitive with over 17 years experience. She is author of the book Untamed Voices and the Complete Idiot's Guide to Pet Psychic Communication, as well as the soon-to-be-released Animal Communication Bootcamp. Debbie communicates with animals all over the globe and holds workshops to teach people how to access this ability. She believes that we all hold the ability to communicate with our animal friends, and she is dedicated to opening people's hearts and minds to this phenomena. Her personal website is animaltelepathy.com. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today on Reflections.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. And I want to start off with an introduction question. Can you let our listeners know what exactly it means to you to be an animal communicator?
Being an animal communicator means I'm able to tap into animals on a deeper level. So I am able to hear, feel, see whatever it is they're trying to get across to me. So it goes beyond the physical sensations. So when I connect with an animal and I ask them a question, it's like a ball of energy that I receive, and then I interpret it. So a lot of times it's like a little movie playing in my head, and I'm able to interpret that so I can give people a better understanding of what it is their animal's trying to let them know.
Excellent. And what are some examples of different situations in which animal communication could be beneficial?
I get calls for all different reasons. A lot of times it's behavioral issues. You know, a cat is peeing outside of the box, or dogs keeping their people up all night, horses that all of a sudden are unhappy and are bucking. It's also used, a lot of people will call me with an older animal, trying to figure out if that animal is ready to pass over, if they need help passing over, if they want to pass on their own. And then we can honor them from whatever wish they have for that. I get calls a lot of times with people connecting with their animals in spirit as well, which I'm able to do. So we can bring animals from the other side through. I also, if people want to add an animal into their home, you know, rescue animals, to figure out if it's a good match for the home. You know, does this rescue animal want to be in a home with kids, or do they want to just be the only animal? So that way we can make a smoother transition when people are trying to add animals into their home. So there's really a variety of reasons that people can use an animal communicator.
Excellent. And can you tell us a little bit more detail about how these messages come through to you, how exactly the communications come through? Is it animal specific, or is it pretty general how it usually comes through?
It's pretty general. I mostly get pictures when I'm working with an animal. So when I ask an animal a question, it's like I said before, it's like a little movie playing in my head that I interpret. When I will also feel pain in my body. So if I'm scanning an animal's body for pain, I'll begin to feel it in my body as well, as a subtle sensation, which makes us, it's the animal trying to let us know we need to pay attention to this area of their body. Sometimes I'll taste things or smell things when I'm going into a body. If an animal has a specific treat, I may taste, you know, let's say peppermint, or I may smell something as well. It's their way of letting us know. It's another way of them, you know, letting us know what it is they're trying to get across. So the communication, you use all of your inner senses. My strong point really is my visual inner eye.
Excellent. And I know Casey, when he would go and do his readings and be able to get communication for people, he had a bit of a preparation to do. Is there preparation involved before you go in and do a consultation?
I always I take a moment to set my intention. And when I set my intention, I'm specifically, you know, asking to plug into the energy of a specific animal. So it's Lucky the dog who's located in, you know, Charlotte, North Carolina, as opposed to some other Lucky the dog, for an example. And I also ask that none of, you know, my vital energy be used. I ask for the message to come through as pure as possible for the good of all involved. So I do go through a process, an internal process of, and when I go through that intention process, I'm also automatically kind of quieting my mind.
Excellent. And you talked a little bit about communicating with animals in spirit. This is a new one to me, and it's incredibly fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that involves and how that comes through?
Sure. When I connect with an animal in spirit, I do it the same way as I'm connecting with a live animal. The only difference is I will take an extra moment to raise my vibration, so I am able to connect with the animal in spirit. And when I connect with the animal in spirit, I allow their essence to come through to me, it's the same as connecting with a live animal. We are connecting with the essence of the being, and a lot of times the animals will pull through other animals who are in spirit with them, or sometimes they'll also pull through people. They'll show me the people they are with, and sometimes the animal will relay messages. The people that they are with in spirit, they'll relay messages to me from them as well.
Excellent. And this is a gift that you have that I'm sure you've honed over many years, but I'm sure the average person has had quite an experience, whether it's psychic or telepathic communication, some form of nonverbal communication from their pets. Um, in saying that, I'm sure everyone would love to get more in touch with that. So, what advice do you have as a professional for people who want to learn to communicate better with their own animals?
I truly believe we all have this ability. I believe it's a gift from God, and it's an ability that we all have. It's really a matter of tuning into it and trusting in this. Animals communicate this way all the time. It's natural to them. And a lot of kids, before we rely on verbal communication, kids are natural at this. I have two little boys, and this comes natural to them. So I do believe everybody has the ability. A way to hone in on this it sounds very simple, but it's hard to do in today's day and age, is to really be present in the moment. We're so busy multitasking. I've got to look at my phone. I've got to look at my emails. We feel guilty if we're just being still and in the moment. But if we can quiet our mind and be in the moment with our animals, information will begin to come through. A little trick that I like to tell people to do is to imagine your animal speaking with you. So ask them a question, imagine that they are saying something to you. And a lot of times what that does, it just opens up our intuitive window a little bit wider.
Right, absolutely. And in your book, Untamed Voices, you work a lot with exotic animals such as tigers, lions, bears, and wolves. What are some of the things that they share with you as opposed to maybe a more common domesticated animal?
And when you work with wild animals or animals in captivity, a lot of times their messages are a little bit different. Even though they have access to humans, it's a different relationship. And I've had the pleasure of working at many wonderful animal preserves and sanctuaries. And a lot of times people will, the people who care for these animals will want to know if they're getting enough interaction, if they like their food, if they like their neighbor. So a lot of times we can make changes to their enclosure or to the animal that's next to them to make them happier. Some animals want to be in the public eye, and some prefer to be in a part of the preserve where they don't get a lot of public contacts. Some of they communicate all different things. One of the ones that sticks out when you ask that question, there was an owl that I worked with. His name was Artemis, and he is in the book Untamed Voices. And he thought it was so important when people went up to look at him and admire him that they said what their name was. Like, he liked a proper introduction. Hello, my name's Debbie. And he got mad at people when they didn't introduce themselves or tell them their name. So I just thought that was hysterical. So they come up with all different things. But a lot of times, and animals have a greater awareness of the earth, of our energy, and there is great concern of what we are doing to the earth, and that does come through.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. For me, that's something that's very important. Is I feel like at this time, Casey talked about this being such a huge time of transition and big changes going on. As you said, animals are seen to be much more connected to the earth. So in saying that, they must be much more sensitive to the changes that are going on, and of course, the changes that are going on that humans are helping to create. Um, can you tell us a little bit about what maybe they're telling us in regards to this? Maybe if they're giving us a warning or trying to help us along the way with what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I pick up different things from different animals, and I think one of the ones that was so moving to me when it was when I worked with the whales. I went on a ship, and I was able to communicate with a lot of the humpback whales. This was um, off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I was able to communicate with them on a deeper level. And they are such record keepers of the earth and the oceans. And they, it's like they go out of their way to try to heal the earth and the oceans, yet we are wrecking it at a rapid rate. And they pick up this vibration through the water and the pollution. And even there are different sound waves that are going through the waters that are beginning to kill them off. Um, and yet, through it all, they still love us unconditionally, which is so hard to fathom with what we are doing to the earth.
Right, absolutely. And I want to take a step back and get a little bit of your background. I'm curious, when did you first realize that you could talk to animals and this gift started to come up?
You know, when I was a kid, my greatest dream was to be able to talk to the animals. You know, I used to watch that show. I think it was Mr. Ed. I'm dating myself, but I used to, you know, that was my dream. And I used to work at a stable, and I would sit in this pony stall. I think maybe I was 8 years old, and I would wait for him to talk to me. And it, you know, fast forward many, many years, you know, animals have always just been my passion and my purpose. And I was a very shy kid growing up, so you know, me and the animals would hang out together. I'd prefer to be with the animals than the people. But as you know, I became more verbal. I didn't believe in this ability. And then one day I had taken a class with some friends of mine to understand animals on a deeper level. And again, I was a skeptic. I had gone through this whole phase where I did not believe in this. And even if I could hear the animals, I didn't think I could handle it, especially hearing that an animal is in pain or abused. You know, I cried during Disney movies, so I can't even imagine, you know, feeling that from an animal. And you know, the universe knew I needed a big wake up call. I needed something to prove to me that this was possible. And I was in the barn, and I was working with different animals, and this little goat, you know, kind of called me over, and he was perched on his gate, and I thought I heard him say, don't you think I'm handsome? So of course I thought I was making that up. And then he said, your pants are funny. And I had flowered stretch pants on at the time, and he was right. They were pretty funny. And then he said, what do you think of my ornaments? And that I'm like, okay, where did that come from? You know, I didn't make that up. I don't even know what that means. So when I went back and I was talking to one of the ladies who runs the program, she said, oh yeah, he always, you know, every time the staff goes and feeds this goat, they're like, Tyler, what do you have for ornaments today? Because he always had stuff hanging off his horns. So to me, that was like, whoa, this is real. And then after that, you know, I practiced every single day. I was hungry for it, and got to the point where I really felt I could help people. And that was
Excellent.
17 years ago. So it's been a work in progress.
Absolutely. And as a mother, how has it been to see your children grow up and see them in tune with this type of thing?
You know, it's great, and I it's wonderful when kids ask me questions and they believe in this. And I think it's so important, you know, for the youth growing up to be able to have that connection with animals, you know, and then they'll begin to have it with the earth, and then you know, maybe we can turn things around. But
Right.
it's natural to them, you know, to hear me, you know, talk to the animals, or knowing that animals in spirit are still wandering our house and that type of thing. So, and they go and they tell their friends about it. So it's natural to them, which I love. You know, that's very important to me.
Absolutely. And Edgar Cayce said in one of his readings that our animals can sometimes reincarnate with us again in a from a previous life to our present life. What are your thoughts on this and the whole idea of reincarnation? Of course, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it's like for an animal in the spirit realm.
Sure. I absolutely believe animals reincarnate back to us. I will connect with an animal in spirit, and a lot of times they will tell me, I'm getting ready to come back. And sometimes they'll even tell me what they're coming back as. Look for me, I'm going to be this color, and I'm coming back in the spring. Sometimes they're very specific, sometimes not so much. They'll just say, yes, I am coming back when the time is right. So animals can incarnate back into our lives many times, and I do see this all the time. And I think it brings people comfort as well, knowing that their animal can come back into their lives to either complete a purpose, to help us with something, or to just be our partner through this journey.
Absolutely. And there are some, I guess for our listeners, I'd like to maybe go over a few of like the common problems and what maybe you've found have been some of the issues that are causing this, what has been communicated to you from animals. I know
Sure.
there's oftentimes a lot of separation anxiety, especially when it comes to household dogs. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've found has been communicated about this?
Sure. Um, Separation anxiety is a big one. That's a common one that, a lot of times dogs, when you leave, they love to be with us so much that when we leave, they'll destroy the house or rip things apart. It's their way of getting, anxiety is a form of energy, and it's their way of getting this energy out of their body, or a way of handling being upset. So one of the most important things that I do when I work with animals is and this goes for kids as well, is you don't want to tell them what they're not supposed to do. Because if I tell my kids don't eat the candy out of the candy jar, what are they going to do the minute I turn my back is do that. And we're picturing that with animals. If we say, don't tear the house up or don't eat the couch while I'm gone, we are actually picturing that in our minds. So they get confused. So I formulate a job, and I give them a purpose of what I really want them to do. So if I'm leaving, I will explain to them, and I ask people to do this as well. Animals want to know how long we're going to be gone. So I'm going to work, I'll be gone 8 hours. And it's not that they necessarily understand hours and minutes, but when we say 8 hours as opposed to 3 days, it does send a different sense of energy. So they do begin to understand that sense of time. And then while we're gone, we give them a job to do. Your job is to watch over the house and to keep everything in order. If you feel anxiety, here is something to chew on. And so we're picturing the behavior we want. So a lot of times when we do that, we're giving the animal an outlet for that energy. So, okay, my job is to patrol the house. And by giving them something to chew on while we're gone and giving them a designated chew thing, a lot of times it helps them to achieve that desirable behavior. And sometimes just acknowledging what an animal is going through. I acknowledge your fear of, me not coming home, but, I will be home. This is your job. Sometimes just acknowledging that helps them to heal that particular fear or that anxiety.
Right. Another one I wanted to touch on is bringing a new animal into the home. I know a lot of people experience that, the dynamic that's involved with that. What's been communicated to you about that general issue?
Yeah, it's really important if you want to add an animal into the home to check with the existing animals. It's a lot of jealousy can happen. It can be a rough transition if we don't check with the other animals. So a lot of times people will call me and say, I want to rescue another animal, but I don't want to disrupt my home in the process. So we'll check with the other animals and make sure it's okay and get their input. I just worked with a client yesterday, and she wanted to add another rescue cat into the home. And the other 2 cats who were in the home were very specific about what they wanted. One was an older cat and wanted her to adopt a younger cat to keep the other cat, who's a pain, occupied. So they were very specific, and they wanted a female cat. And sometimes they'll even actually get pretty specific, even as far as color. I want to, or they'll picture a color, and sometimes it turns out to be exactly the being the person was looking at in the first place. So they can be very, very specific, and by getting the cooperation of the animals in the home, the transition is a lot easier.
Excellent. And the last one I want to touch on is the transition into spirit for an animal. I know, and I'm sure you can relate, when you spend a large chunk of your life with an animal, it really becomes your companion. It can be your best friend. So it is like losing a human companion, a human best friend. It's a very devastating process. What can you tell us about what animals communicate during this process of passing on the spirit?
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing. And when people call me to figure out if their animal needs help passing, when I communicate with the animal, some animals want to pass on their own. They believe this is part of their journey and their process. And it's very hard for us to see an animal in pain. And sometimes we just need to make them comfortable as they go through this process. Some animals need help passing, that's not part of their journey. They want help or assistance when the time comes. When I connect with an animal to figure out if it is time, I can tell when they come through to me just by their eyes, usually, if their spirit is fully in their body. I can tell when an animal is preparing to pass because the spirit will be almost half in and half out of the body. There's a different look to the eye, intuitively for me. So that helps the person also to decide. I'll also see angels around an animal when it's coming very close to the time when they're going to pass. A lot of times animals will come back afterwards. They'll send specific messages, and come and visit the person through a dream as well. So it can be quite a spiritual journey, helping your animal through this. And there's no one recipe. Each animal is an individual, and each animal through their life journey has to go through this process in their own way.
Right. Excellent. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back with more from Debbie McGillivary here on Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. We're getting right back into my interview with Debbie McGillivary, and she is a professional animal communicator. We've been talking about all things animal communication and what they have to tell us and how we can help to make their lives more pleasurable. I wanted to talk a little bit about holistic health when it comes to pet care. I know you're very big into that. Can you give us maybe some tips on holistic guidelines when it comes to our animals' health?
Sure. Animals are great candidates for alternative healing and holistic pet care. Their bodies are so pure, that they respond really, really well to any type of holistic or alternative healing that is available. I'll see a lot of times when I work with horses, they'll show me their structure being off, and usually chiropractic is wonderful for them. I've seen acupuncture alleviate pain and anxiety with different types of animals. I love using homeopathic or herbal remedies with my animals. I truly believe that the homeopathic remedies has the ability to help our bodies begin to heal itself. I have a little emergency kit, and arnica is probably the number one thing that I use all the time. If I'm playing with my dog on the beach and she gets sore, I'll give her a little arnica, and that usually helps her to feel good the next day. Same with my horse. If I'm going on a long trail ride and I know they're going to be sore the next day, arnica, and myself too, arnica is a great remedy to have on hand. I do a lot with herbs as well. So there are different herbs, especially, when it comes to bug season for the horses and my dogs. I'll make a all natural fly spray through different herbs and scents, which is so much healthier than all the chemicals
Right.
that are out there. So I truly believe, that we have access to all of these wonderful healing sources. We just need to educate ourselves. So I do try to help people to see that there are more natural solutions to healing our animals as well.
Absolutely. And aside from using herbs and things like that to help heal and using alternative healing remedies, um, there seems to be a lot of health issues amongst domesticated animals. What would you say is the biggest reason for that? Is it lack of communication and lack of understanding that we can telepathically communicate? Or is it more of health issues that we're doing from not exercising or diet, or is it a little bit of all of that?
You know, that's a great question. I think one of the big things, unfortunately, is our food supply. I think there's so many there's a lot of poor food choices that are available for our animals these days. Down to genetically modified foods, all the chemicals or the antibiotics or the additives in our foods. So food is a really great place to start if your animal is having health challenges, is to really feed really, really good quality food. It's very, very important. I've seen so many skin problems and a lot of things go away when really, really good food is offered, or they're switched over to something like that. So that's a great place to start. Exercise is, very, very important. People will say, well, I walk my dog, but some dogs really need a lot more exercise. They need to run full tilt, not all dogs, but some people say, well, I let them out back and they run around. That's really not exercise. So I think people need to understand what breeds need what as far as exercise is concerned. I think as well that in traditional medicine, we put Band-Aids on things instead of figuring out what the root cause is and seeing the body as a whole beautiful spiritual being. And that there are many levels to healing things, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, and understanding what the process is for that. So I think when we see the big picture, that there are much better ways to address things than slapping a Band-Aid on something with pills. And of course, there's always, good reasons for that, I'm sure. But I think seeing the animal as a whole being is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you maybe share a story or two about some of the more unique messages that have come through in your 17 years of experience with communicating with animals? Is there any that come to your mind right away?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. This is always the hardest question because there's just so many. Oh my gosh, so hard.
Maybe a theme that a certain animal communicates, like maybe all dogs are communicating a very similar thing, or when you got to work with lions or tigers or elephants, they're all seem to be communicating a very similar message.
Yeah, you know, I I can't generalize like that. I think, I don't see things as breed specific necessarily. Um, so that's really, really hard. I do feel like animals are so much more intuitive than we are. I feel like they are professional at reading energy, and they can know what we're thinking in an instant when we don't even know what we're thinking sometimes. They can
Right.
just tap into our body on a deeper level. And I feel like that's kind of a common theme with animals. They can read our energy very efficiently. And I think that, obviously they love us unconditionally and are here to help not only us, but really the human race as well. And that's a big theme that I feel. And, dogs are, they want to be with us. They want to be our friend. They help us to learn how to play. Horses are amazing healers. These beautiful big animals have the ability to heal us on so many emotional levels that we don't even realize it sometimes until we look back. But we see it with horses helping, handicapped children, or children with disabilities. I've seen many of my friends who are going through really, really hard times, and they'll come out to the barn or they'll start riding horses. And all of a sudden, all these fears or all these things that they have gone through, they begin to disappear because they become more confident within themselves because they're bonding with this 1,500-pound animal. So I see different, different things. But it's very hard to be breed specific.
Yeah, no worries. That was excellent. Thank you. And I understand that you offer personal communication consultations, and we'll make sure that we give our listeners the links to get with you on that. Well, can you give us a little rundown for anyone who's looking to get a professional consultation from you as to what you offer?
Sure. Like I've said before, I've been doing this for 17 years. I do mostly phone consultations. I will do also in-home visits as well. And I offer short appointments. We can do 10 minutes, which is great for a quick check-in with an animal that I've worked with before to make sure everything's okay. 20-minute appointments or 30-minute appointments. And usually when somebody calls for an appointment, I'll ask them, which animal or, who did you want to start with? And all I really require is the animal's name, what they look like, so a physical description of them and where they're located. And that's so I can plug my energy into their energy through that intention process. And once I plug my energy into them, usually what happens is I'll begin to feel or see their personality come through. I'll always ask them, animal, if there's something they want to say first. I kind of give them the floor first. And then we start with the questions. So the person will ask their animal a question, and I act kind of as the interpreter. So it's kind of like a three-way conversation.
Very nice. Sounds wonderful. And last but not least, probably the most important, is I want to talk about your Soul Growth Sunday conference that you have upcoming here at the ARE. It's on July 19th, and it's here in Virginia Beach at the ARE headquarters. Can you tell us a little bit about what you'll be talking about and what you hope conference attendees take away from this presentation?
Sure. I'm very excited. I'm really looking forward to that. My passion is not only working with animals and healing animals, but it's teaching people this, how to connect with our animals on a deeper level. I enjoy it so much. And as I stated before, everybody has this ability. So I love offering this to people. So I usually will go through the stages of explaining how the information comes through, and I will do meditations with people just to help people kind of quiet their mind, especially in a big group setting, to kind of get to that quiet place. I'll go through the intention process, how to accurately plug your energy into an animal. And the fun part is I have fabulous animal teachers who've been teaching for a very long time, and I offer a home study class as well. And so I have many, many animals who are teachers. So the beauty of this is during a class, they are able to connect with my animal teachers via pictures. So as you know, we don't have to be in person to do this. We can do this long distance. So they're able to connect with animals who are not physically there. And the great part of this is the participants in the class will be able to do this, and I'll be able to validate for them. So they will be connecting with some of my animals who they know nothing about. And when I validate for them the information they're getting or the questions I'm having them ask the animals, it's proof for them, kind of like what I talked about before when I had that goat and I had that aha moment. That's what I want to give people who take the class, is that aha moment where they're like, oh my gosh, I am doing this. And once you have that little nugget of information, it gives you confidence to keep going and to expand your abilities. So you may just get a little word or a little picture, but the more you practice it and expand upon your intuitive abilities, the information comes through in bigger and better ways.
Excellent. Thank you. And we'll make sure that we give our listeners all the information they need to register for your presentation in July. I guess the last question I want to end on is, throughout your 17 years of experience working so intimately with animals and having these wonderful communications with them, is there I think it's obvious for anyone who spends time with animals, they're so full of wisdom. Like you said, they're so unconditionally loving. And I think that is something that they're here to teach us and show us. But if there's any one message that they're seeming to communicate to us, what would that message be, or a general idea that they're trying to communicate?
I think the big thing is um, a big theme here is love, the importance of love. And I think animals, they have really true raw emotions, and they love with their whole being. And I think as humans, we may use the word love a little bit too freely without putting our energy and our spirit and our soul behind it. And I feel like animals do this naturally, and they're here to teach us to get back to our soul, to love in that spiritual sense of the word, which we may think we do, but we don't. And animals are truly here. They're our teachers. They're amazing spiritual beings, and they're raw and they're pure. And I feel like as humans, we have so many layers, and so much baggage, that if we can get back to that soul level of love, all the other junk goes away. And I feel like in general, that is a big purpose of why animals are in our lives and here.
Absolutely. So it's very important that we listen and start communicating more with them.
Absolutely. They have so much to tell us and share with us and to teach us, and they're great guides and partners. They are. When I am working with an animal, I honor them with amazing respect. And for people to think that animals are below us or unworthy, it blows my mind. They're far more intelligent and spiritual than a lot of people are.
You're right. Yeah. I think the idea of unconditional love for me personally has been, and patience has been a big thing for me too. Is I've had
Yeah.
a dog since he was 6 weeks, and I've had him. He's about a year and a half now, and he has all of the things that I work with on a personal level, my spiritual ideals and principles. He's constantly reminding me and showing me how it's actually done.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a great point. Animals will come into our lives sometimes, and they mirror back, sometimes what we need to learn, or they mirror back things to us. And we may think, I've had animals in my lives and I'm like, oh, they're difficult, but they have taught me so much. So patience is such a big one.
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely. Wonderful. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been a pleasure enjoying all of your wisdom that you shared with us, and your message is a very powerful one. I think it's incredibly important that we do listen to the wisdom of what animals are here to teach us, because this is a very unique, kind of tumultuous time, and they know how to help us get through it, and that's what they're here for.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Debbie is the featured presenter at Soul Growth Sunday Conference on July 19th, and her presentation is entitled Animal Communication: If You Listen, They Will Speak. This takes place at the ARE headquarters here in Virginia Beach. And for details on this experiential workshop that will help you to use your innate intuition to understand and practice animal communication, you can visit our website, as always, at edgarcayce.org/conferences. If you'd like to schedule a personal consultation with Debbie and learn more about her incredible work, you can visit her website at animaltelepathy.com. On behalf of everyone here at the Association for Research and Enlightenment and moretalk.tv, I'm your host, Brenton Bickerstaff, wishing you all a wonderful week. Remember to always treat others the way you would like to be treated, and that also goes for our animal companions. They have so much wisdom and love to give us. Pay attention, and you'd be surprised at what you can find. Thank you so much for tuning in to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce, and I'll see y'all next week. And now it has come that time for the Thought for the Day here on Reflections. And joining me for the Thought for the Day is Dr. Bill Austin. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the Thought for the Day today.
Oh, thank you, Brent. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Of course, honored to have you on the show. And if you can go ahead and read the Thought for the Day today for our listeners and share a little bit of your personal thoughts on the excerpt.
I'd be happy to. This thought comes from reading 3374-1. The entity should keep close to all those things that have to do with the outdoor activities, for it is the best way to keep yourself young, to stay close to nature, close to those activities in every form of exercise that breathes in the deep ozone and the beauty of nature. For you may breathe it into your own soul as you would a sunset or a morning sunrise, and see that sometimes it's as pretty as the sunset. What great advice. You know, I was reading in Time magazine recently of the aging body, when we start to fall apart. And about 35, we start to go downhill, and it gets worse as we hit 40 because the breakdown seems to speed up. If we turn to the Cayce readings, there's always something positive that we can do to restore health to the body. And one of the central focuses is exercise, whether it be in front of an open window, or more importantly, and he stresses this a lot, out in nature. About a year ago, my wife and I bought some bicycles. And I'm not the greatest thing on a moving object by any means. But we would go around the neighborhood, and we would also take it down to the Greenway, which runs along the Roanoke River. It's really beautiful. We'd go down midweek where there weren't too many people there, and we'd really cruise along. And I've grown to absolutely love it. And now that winter is here, we still try to get out to walk, but it's a little cold on the bicycle to do that, and sometimes a bit snowy. But just being outside is glorious. We were out shoveling the other day, and I just felt so good being out in the fresh air, physically working, doing some exercise. And it's comical because one of our neighbors has a little child care center, and I had dug a trench for the water to run down into the gutter, and he was out with his shovel and he was filling it all in. And there was a part of me that was saying, "Oh, what are you doing in my canal?" And another part inside of me that was saying, "Oh, thank you. I get to go outside again. I get to do some physical activity outside." Being outside is magical. Years ago, I worked as a wilderness instructor and took kids out into the wilderness for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and sleeping out under the stars and hiking all day or rock climbing and rappelling. I can't think of a time when I felt so good as when I was physically active, but when I am physically active, outdoors. Being close to nature, Cayce always said, was being close to God.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, I resonate completely with this. You raise a great point in that I don't think I've ever felt so alive and kind of healthy than the times when I'm outdoors and I'm really immersed in nature. I've always found too, the more you talked about how when you take your bike rides down to the Roanoke River, you do it midweek, so you can kind of have a more pristine form of nature, I guess you can say, where you can kind of get moments of solitude to yourself, where it's just you and nature. I think there's a very powerful feedback that's created when that's the case. You really get to, for me recently, I live here in Virginia Beach, and there's a nice state park, and there's been a lot of snowfall lately. And we live near a Navy base where there's jets that are constantly flying over. But because of the snowfall, the jets were not flying over. And these are very loud fighter jets, Navy jets. So when the snowfall came, I was always out in First Landing. And it's beautiful not only to see First Landing covered in snow, but also to finally, probably for one of the first times since I've been living here in Virginia Beach, to hear what it sounds like, what nature sounds like. For me, that was a very spiritual healing experience. And I love how Cayce addresses that this is the best way to keep yourself young. And I absolutely could not agree more with that. I've spent a lot of time out in nature, and it's absolutely an essential part of my spiritual practice to spend time out in nature. And if there's a couple things I can contribute my health to over the years, as I see many of my friends kind of not keeping up with health practices. I think one of the most essential things is being out in nature. The amount of time that I spend out in nature. And I see a lot of people, especially this younger generation, where we sit in front of put a screen in front of us and we're okay. We can stay inside all day, or give us Netflix or give us a television and we'll be fine. Um, I tend not to subscribe to that paradigm, because I've felt the spiritual effect, the healing effect, and how it can really keep you young and enlivened and really optimistic. It can help you to stay grateful. It can humble you to be out in nature. There's all these incredible health benefits that I think a lot of people really need to start incorporating more into their lives. And it's just absolutely essential for us to be out in nature. The other thing that Cayce brings up in this reading is the emphasis on exercise, and the way he words his readings is always so powerful. He says, to stay close to nature, close to those activities in every form of exercise that breathes in the deep ozone, the beauty of nature. And I love how he says every form of exercise, because there's this emphasis within that, I guess, the health movement, the health community, the health conscious people, where they have very specific. Everyone has their own specific exercise, and they think that might be the best. But the beauty I love of the Cayce material is that any form of exercise is wonderful. It's beneficial. And for me personally, I do very simple stretches daily. And I think that's a beautiful form of exercise. Or I just go out hiking in nature. I'm not going out and I'm not sprinting and running miles and doing heavy lifting weights. I'm just doing these very simple forms of exercise. And I think it's essential that people understand that any form of exercise is in a way a way to keep you more in touch with God, because it helps you to be more in tune with your own personal body.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up a good point about the exercise. The best exercise is the one you do. And Cayce
Right.
refers to that idea a number of times. When asked, what's the best Bible to read? The one you read and apply. What's the best discipline? The one you do and apply. What's the
Yep.
best exercise? The one you do. And do it outdoors. When he was talking about
Yes.
his stretching exercises, he said, wear light clothing, open up the window, stand on your toes, throw your arms up, and breathe deeply, and then
Yeah.
bend down to touch your toes. I mean, it's such a simple exercise. But one of the keys is open up that window, get some fresh air into those lungs there. You won't freeze to death, even
Yeah.
if it's cold outside.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't stress enough and he hits it right on the head here when he talks about breathing in the deep ozone, and all he means is that getting fresh air. It's
Yes. Yeah.
so essential for our health to get that fresh air,
Right.
and I think that's absolutely essential for a health practice.
Yes.
Yeah,
Good.
wonderful. Well, this was an excellent thought for the day. Thank you, Bill, for joining me. It's always a pleasure listening to your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Brett. Always a pleasure to be with you. Have a salubrious day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You too. I'll
Thanks.
see you next week.
Bye-bye. I look forward to it.